Okay, I think we should get started. My name is Anne-Marie Key, and I hope that wherever you're calling in from, that you are calling in healthy. Whether you're a student or a staff or a parent or a past parent or alumni or friend of the school, thank you for joining us to dream about our future. I have a couple of housekeeping announcements. The first is that all 5 of these presentations will be recorded and shared. The second is if you have a question, we will have time towards the end to have a Q&A. And so I would ask you to enter your question into the bottom section that's entitled Q&A. So why are we here? In 9 years, we're going to celebrate our 150th anniversary as a school. And by then, we hope to have implemented a plan for the property that you see on our screen, which is Northcote. This spring, we are going to start planting half an acre. And so basically what we want to do is talk about what will happen between this spring and our 150th anniversary. So thank you for being part of this conversation. We're really excited by the new vision for our school, which is to inspire teenagers to be leaders who care, connect, and contribute. And we all know the importance in particular of that last word, inspiring teenagers to contribute. And we are super excited as a school to specialize in teenagers. And we've done a lot of work on our strategic plan so that we can make this vision a reality. We did not change our values years ago when we did the strategic plan. However, this year, because of the diversity inclusivity work and our work on mental health and wellness, we are going to be updating them, but not changing them. But I assure you that our values are more important than ever. And we as a school take living our values really, really seriously. So here are our 4 directions. The first is authentic learning, and why that's important to Lakefield is that we're a school that prepares students not just for the best university entrance, but also for life. And so we're keen on authentic learning experiences. The second direction is something that we are known for now in Canada. We believe we're the only school that's made this kind of a real commitment to outdoors every day. And we're keen to help students continue to have great outdoor ed experiences. But now we want to see how do we help them understand that they have a responsibility to give back to the environment. The third is community first. We have always been a school that's about relationships. And we want our teenagers to understand what it means to be part of a local and a global community. And then finally, everything that we do is based on what the future is going to look like at our school. You can see that where our directions overlap is really our bread and butter as a school. And that is that we are delivering transformative student experiences. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the momentum that we have in our directions so far. We are in the middle of living our new schedule. We've also introduced new programs and enrichment opportunities. In terms of community first, we have our new house model, which means that all of our day students are integrated into the houses. So there's a real Canadian presence and energy. We also have done a lot of work on what it means to have signature programs at the school. And you can see we have a definition of them. And so far, we have 3 signature programs. And I have to say, our students are really excited about them. And we're going to continue to invest in these 3 areas. So we're in a position now where we're looking at what other signature programs might we explore. In terms of strength and permanence, this hole in the ground that you see is going to be Ross and Perron House. It'll be situated between Rashley and the Colbrooks, and it's slated to be finished by next September. This will be a double residence housing over 50 students, and will be the first that really has the full common room space with a full kitchen so that all day and boarding students can be together under one roof in their house. We are also very close to finishing our campus master plan. And a big part of that is going to be our new dining hall. We're super grateful to John and Jane Hepburn, who gave us the transformative gift for the dining hall. If you can see our campus here, this is the current dining hall, this is the gym. So the new dining hall is going to be positioned here in between. It looks like it's going to be one building. We aren't sure at this point, but we are really excited that we also now have this commitment for a new dining hall before the 150th. Also in our strategic plan and our campus master plan then is this passionate commitment to being one campus. And this fall, as I rode the pontoon boat with students, it gave me a great opportunity to see we aren't that far from Lakefield to Northcote. So we really believe that we can dream and live this now. So with a lot of modesty, I want to just walk you through, in 10 years, we aspire to be best in class among Ontario boarding schools in terms of our facilities, because we will be upgrading all of them, plus the dining hall and social areas. Best house model program, most committed to boarding, the highest enrollment of domestic boarders, the highest ratio of domestic to international boarders, and the highest acre per student ratio. Nationally, we want to be the most committed to learning in the outdoors and to giving back to the outdoors. We want to remain the smallest enrollment among top 10 schools by reputation, the highest endowment per student. Of course, that's so important to us. We are proud to have achieved the highest alumni donor participation rate, significantly higher, I might add, humbly, and the strongest planned giving program. And all of this means internationally that we're positioned to become recognized for crafting transformative experiences that deliver on our 4 directions. And then along comes the pandemic, and a lot of what we were doing came to a pause. And once we figured out the safety plan, and we're really proud that all of our community remains safely going to school every single day, thanks to our great community, of course. But what it did is it also caused us to accelerate our creativity and courage. And so we're moving forward with this plan. The board and trustees agreed to a few guiding principles, and I just want to highlight 3 of them. The first is that we're assuming that status quo is not an option and COVID is going to continue to impact us. We are ready, even though we have lost our focus temporarily, we're now ready to make some big decisions according to our values and strategy. Perhaps one of the biggest changes is that the campus will be our campus all year. And what that means is we're investing in some summer programming that will extend our value proposition for 12 months of the year. We've always said, the campus is at its most beautiful time in the summer, and yet none of our students are experiencing it. We will offer some innovative optional programming for additional costs. And we're going to prioritize these opportunities for our students, whether they're curricular or co-curricular. We want strong programs, and we want this new Northcote initiative to be a major part of that. It all comes down to our students, and we want to be laser focused on crafting these experiences for our students. And we think that now is the time. It's a unique opportunity. We took this picture when our Adachi girls were out on the pontoon, and we just couldn't believe it. So we are using this to focus on, we believe that the sustainable farm will really enhance our programs at Lakefield, where all of our students will be able to work on the land and produce food for our new dining hall. We know that a sustainable farm will be the first in Canada. And we want to steal the best, perhaps you could say, from universities and US schools, and just get ahead of this right now and take advantage of this opportunity. And finally, it'll be uniquely Canadian. We have an opportunity, and I think if we're bold and visionary and well-researched, we can get our kids so excited about this. We want to get them dirty. We want to get them working hard. We want them learning authentically about food and sustainability and how to give back to the environment. And we know that when we enhance our program this way, we'll be able to continue to the kind of demand that we've seen for the school and continue to attract the best students, we think, in Canada and the world. So thank you for joining us on this journey. We are going to start small, but as you can see, we really want to dream big. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bruce McMahon, to tell us a little bit about the property and its history so that we can then move forward to the future.
Okay. And share. Perfect. My name is Bruce McMahon. I'm director of Northcote Properties, and I'm excited to chat with you today a little bit about Northcote, a place that I've known for many, many years. Almost my private club, and I'll share the passion I have for it. I've kept myself scripted, so this is a good thing for everybody concerned. September 1st was our 30th wedding anniversary. I managed to remember, number one, and I also managed to organize a scenic flight with one of our staff members. This photo is from that flight. Heading north from Peterborough, we passed over the main campus. This was familiar territory, organized, purposeful, and filled with strong memories. Moving on towards Northcote, what I thought I knew about the layout of the property suddenly became unfamiliar. You can see in this image the relationship between the fields, the forest, and the water. I'll come back to this point in a moment. But quantified, what does Northcote look like? It's a 160-acre property. It has 6 acres approximately of arable land. There's 5,000 feet of shoreline dipping into Lake Cachwanuka. It has a house, 2 log cabins, a landlocked houseboat, a boathouse, 2 barns, 5 sheds, a 40 antique sleigh and buggy collection, and a 10 kilowatt solar panel array. But of course, Northcote is more than the sum of all those numbers. There are stories, traditions, and characters, past and present, that need to be shared. As we think about the future, there are certainly important lessons from the past. In 2007, Donald and Gretchen Ross secured Northcote for LCS. Donald has often shared with me his hope that Northcote can once again become important in the lives of our students. His memories of skating, skiing, and occasionally enjoying hot chocolate winter quarters likely motivated his ambitions here. For context and to put things in perspective, I've provided these 2 slides. The geography of Northcote is such that we really talk about 2 areas on the property. There's the area by the water, and that is what you're seeing in this image here. And then there's the other area that is by the road. And this is the area, of course, that would be the particular focus for the farming. My purpose today is to provide you with an update on the property from a historical, a zoning, and a farming perspective. This hand-drawn map of Northcote is perhaps a good place to start. In 1916, George Douglas sketched the place he knew as home. Notice the title, Plan of Northcote Farm. 104 years later, we hope to do just that. It has often been said, or at least I've heard, that Northcote was never a farm, and that reason was because the soil was poor. These are not actually accurate perceptions. For thousands of years, Indigenous people moved through the area on portage routes around the Youngs Point Falls. Susanna Moody recorded in her letters that this area we know today as Northcote was one of the few places along the river that was clear and excellent for berry picking. John Edward Harmland and his wife raised 9 children in those log cabins. The Wright family, named Northcote after their home in England, built the house, the barn overlooking the water, complete with a Victorian-style pigeon house. So much history. George Douglas was an engineer by training and an Arctic explorer of considerable renown. Dr. Gassel was busy tending to the needs of a growing community, including the Grove. But it was logging that opened up this area to the Europeans. Tenant farmers were a constant presence on the property. Kay Douglas wrote in detail about the steady stream of farms using Northcote, complete with a long list of the variety and types of crops that they were growing. My opening image would be, generally speaking, unrecognizable to the vast majority of people that called Northcote home. For much of Northcote's existence, almost the entire property was cleared and under cultivation. The fields we see today represent a small percentage of what that was. This recent fall image of the area by the water represents a great deal of our focus. And LCS became the stewards of the property. Our pre-pandemic research asked our community to think about this area as the center for learning for Northcote. Today is the first time that we gather to think in a much broader context. On a high point of land on the ridge of a drumlin with an excellent vantage point toward north and south sits the 1840s cabin, an 1877 barn, and an 1878 house. Is it possible to imagine these historic structures becoming the heart and soul of a farm once again? Can you see our students spending time here while they harvest, prepare, and cook food as a part of a seed to table program? We do have preliminary plans for a cottage-style 40-bed residence with the old winter quarters house. We have thought about multi-purpose barn transformation, and much like the Guild Hut on our main campus, the log cabins could be rebuilt by students and used as a museum or a learning space. I believe any vision for Northcote must make students responsible for designing and building what is needed whenever possible. Somewhere along my journey, I asked what turned out to be an expensive question. What is Northcote zoned for in terms of use? In the 2007 purchase agreement with the Gassel Family Trust, there is a clause that recognizes the need to pursue the rezoning of the property for institutional use. It is not zoned for school use in the manner that our main campus is. One of our current acceptable uses is farming, so why not farm? Well, running a seed to table program for our students now puts institutional programming at Northcote, change of use. Our goal is something called rural exception, which will allow for school programming and associated infrastructure development on all parts of the property. Of course, wetlands excluded. Northcote is governed by both an official plan at the county level and a zoning bylaw plan at the township level. 4 different rules apply to Northcote. We are asking for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to reduce that number by half. We anticipate having the application submitted at the end of November. As you can see here, these are preliminary site plans. These are by no means written in stone, but they give you the 2 areas, the area by the water and the area by the road. The area by the road, we've included ideas for greenhouses and hoop houses, the existing barn that is there, and some infrastructure that would be important for those agricultural fields. The area to the left is the area by the house with an expansion of the original winter quarters and the reuse and repurposing of some of those buildings. These are the exciting phases in many ways. Approval for our plans are subject to a number of realities, however. The normal administrative time considering aside, 30 to 120 days that you can see there, COVID has slowed things down. In the best case scenario, we will have approval by spring. Late summer or early fall is far more likely as the correct scenario. Once we have achieved our goal, any future development of Northcote will follow the regular path required by any township, a site plan, building permits, and of course, because our entire property has been deemed historically significant, it would require an archaeological survey of those particular areas that you're going to develop. And I put forward this that I was introduced to yesterday. This is Tom Gassel, who found this when he was farming the property. Very exciting find, but also lends us knowledge that this site itself is going to be very historically significant, and we're going to have to be cautious about how we proceed. Farming and gardening. What did farming look like in the past, and what can we expect today? Kay Douglas was well known for extensive garden flowers behind the house and down the slope towards the water. As I mentioned earlier, Northcote was under cultivation for much of its historical period. Divided areas were leased to individual families who raised cattle, chickens, and grew crops. The Gassel brothers in the late 70s and early 80s managed to put themselves through university with the proceeds of mostly growing corn at that time. Challenged by their father, Dr. Gassel, they even managed to grow watermelon. They irrigated from the lake and achieved engineering greatness by being able to pump water all the way from the fields behind the barn from the lake. One of the first things that I did was, when I took charge, is got the soil tested. And I realized very quickly that as lovely as this is, it doesn't really mean a lot to me. So I proceeded to try and find people that could help me with this. And then I remembered there was an agreement made years ago between our then head of school and the president of Trent University. The memorandum of understanding, as written here, states that furthering the connection between the 2 renowned educational institutions, Lakefield College School and Trent University, agree to work together to explore partnership opportunities of mutual interest and student benefit. And I think this part is the most important, and develop mutually beneficial programs, projects, and activities. Cold calling people for help seems to be my best approach. Professor Thompson and Matthew Porter, featured here, of the Trent University have given freely of their time and their expertise. Matthew helped with the fall preparation of 2 of our largest fields. Karen has got me thinking about ways we can study our soil and track our progress towards improving the organic levels and biodiversity. Both Karen and Matthew are excited to look into ways that we at LCS and Trent University can work together on these types of programs. All I can say is that I really hope that we're able to put into formalize that agreement that was created in 2013. So on paper, we appear to be starting with very little as far as traditional farming goes, but a low-tech approach is the heart of this advice we've been receiving from everybody. At least now we have a year-round access to the property thanks to the generous donation of the Lakefield family that will remain anonymous. The roads are all in really, really great shape now. But we are getting started in the spring, as alluded to by Anne-Marie. We're going to plant a ½ acre. It's going to become part of our programming, and we are going to get farming again at Northcote. And this is perhaps my favorite part because it is the conclusion. Northcote is not directly connected to our main campus by land. That has been pointed out by many people. Access to Northcote Farm can be thought of in this manner: a 5-minute shuttle bus drive, a 20-minute bike ride, a 45-minute paddle, or we become the first school to water shuttle our students back and forth to their farm. I think that's just priceless. The First Nations paddled there. The Susanna Moody paddled there to get berries and visit with Harmlin. George Douglas would get aboard his houseboat, the Floater, and go visit and have cups of tea with Alex Mackenzie. We are in many ways just returning to what we were before. And I can think of no better way of honoring Northcote than to recreate those traditions and bring them forward into a modern era. Thank you for your time. I'm really excited to be part of this and to learn along with all of you. And now, Dr. Avery, Associate Head Strategy, is going to excite you. And it's fabulous because it's eating pizza, so I'm already hungry. Dr. Avery.
No, Heather, you're going to have to adjust your sound. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And thanks, Bruce. I want to take a few minutes before I introduce Paul Meldrum to give an outline of the webinar series that's coming up. I've been working on research for the Northcote Farm operation since mid-August, and I've been talking with people who spend their lives thinking about farms and schools. And from all of those conversations, I've culled a set of 5 speakers for this webinar series. And what Anne-Marie has said about Northcote aligning with LCS has really informed about me and how I've selected the speakers that you'll hear over the next month. The next 3 webinars after this one will all be with schools that have active farms. All 3 of these schools are highly rated, academically strong boarding schools for teenagers. And the farms on those schools serve to further distinguish them from their competition. Slide, Mr. McMahon. Next week, you're going to hear from Jake Morrow at Northfield Mount Hermon. You can see the school's tagline on this slide, and I think it's pretty easy to imagine how a farm helps students to dig deep, work hard, and be real. At NMH, the school mission and the values help to shape the farm's purpose. All students at the school do a work job for 4 hours a week, and many of them do it at their working farm. The school seeks in every way to make their students contributors rather than mere consumers, and the farm helps with that goal. Next slide, Bruce. On November 25th, we'll hear from Hotchkiss School. And for Hotchkiss, the farm is situated in their strategic plan as an opportunity to provide experience-centered, project-focused, place-based learning. And for them, that involves not just growing vegetables, but cooking them and eating them as well. Hotchkiss's farm is a farm that feeds its students, and in so doing, provides them with lessons in sustainability. Hotchkiss has also very recently had a major building project on their farm site, the Grange. And as Bruce pointed out, we too dream of building at Northcote. So we hope that they'll be able to share with us some of their goals in building and what they might have done differently. Next slide. On December 2nd, we'll hear from Lawrenceville. And at this school, the farm meets experiential learning goals that are specifically named in their strategic plan. It supplies hands-on learning by doing opportunities for its students. And the farm operation is also informed by Lawrenceville alum Aldo Leopold's land ethic, which asks us as humans to see our community as including soil, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively the land. And I see that as a truly transformational way of imagining community first. Our final webinar, next slide, Bruce, isn't with a school, but with an educational not-for-profit that operates right here in Ontario on the shores of Lake Simcoe. And the folks at Clearwater Farm have a big operation, and they've grown very quickly and in multiple directions. They've raised several $1 million in donations and grants in the past 10 years. And they have educational programming, they have event programming, and they have a market garden operation. Despite their ambition and their accomplishments, their advice is to do less and talk more. I think we can really benefit from seeing what they've learned on their journey of making a 180-year-old farm a hub for sustainable innovation. Next slide. And that brings me to today's speaker, Paul Meldrum, the farm director of McGill University's Macdonald campus farm. Paul runs a poultry operation that supplies about 4,000 eggs a week to McGill dining halls. And his horticultural center supplies those same dining halls with 40,000 kilos of fresh produce annually. But that's not why I invited him here. Rather, it was because of all the people I've talked to about this project. Nobody spoke more eloquently than Paul about the transformative possibilities that farming holds for young people. Through the community engagement initiatives at the Macdonald campus farm, Paul's had the opportunity to see how children and teenagers respond to farm experiences. And I actually get very excited wondering if we could duplicate the day camps that McGill offers. Also, Paul knows how much passion there is for sustainable food production among 21st century university students. He's inspired many students, and I believe that his passion can be an inspiration for our project. So let's give him our attention. Paul?
Well, Heather, that's a pretty big introduction. I hope it didn't overbill me too much. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to participate in this, and I want to congratulate you on seizing this opportunity that Northcote presents. It's really one of those opportunities that doesn't come along that frequently, and not everyone has this chance to embrace something that will have a huge impact on your students. I'm going to start, and Bruce has very graciously agreed to be my technical producer here, and he's going to put some slides. A very brief little bit of a ditty on what we do here at Macdonald Campus Farm. So the first slide, please, Bruce. We're located on the western tip of Montreal Island, so you can see that is Lac Saint Louis. There'll be the Lake of Two Mountains. We're well positioned to embrace a public and to bring people, an urban public, onto the farm so they can see exactly how their food is grown. One of the things I've observed over the years is that people really don't have a clue about what goes into their food production. The interest, though, is changing, and we've seen that in the last 10 years and probably been heightened with the pandemic, is that people really want to know how their food is produced, what's in it, and who is producing it. So here on the western tip of Montreal Island, we're within an hour of over 2 million people. So we're well positioned to accept people. That's not the core mission of McGill. Obviously, it's research and teaching, but part of the Macdonald Campus Farms mission is public outreach. Next slide, please, Bruce. So you can see that we're looking north towards the Lake of Two Mountains. So we have about 235 hectares, or in acres, it's about 500 acres of farmland. There's a horticulture center, the poultry complex, dairy herd of about 90 cows, 75 milking all the time. And we have also a 500-acre arboretum, which you can see at the top of the photo, which abuts Lake of Two Mountains. So we have a very similar property that you have in Northcote, maybe a little bit larger and closer to a broader public. But the similarities are the same. And what we want to do is bring students right to the ground to get dirty, have this experiential learning. Next slide, please, Bruce. And so we started, back years ago, there was a farm director in the 60s and 70s, Rudy Dallenbach, a Swiss guy who came to Canada, and he started public tours. When the foot and mouth disease scare came around 2000, they stopped them. And in 2008, we started them again. We said, we cannot be insular. We have to let people see what we do here and become part of the community rather than an isolated little blob on the western tip of Montreal Island that no one knows what's going on here. So we just approached some schools, and in the first year we had 3,000 kids show up in May and June. A little bit overwhelming, but we had a good program. We had outdoor activities, we had picnic tables, playground. Next slide, please. But we wanted the kids to have an experience that was not in the classroom. It was something that they could touch, feel, hold, something that they would go back, and it wasn't going to be a droning voice such as mine saying, this is what farming is and this is how we grow food, but they would actually see it for themselves. And I remember at the first group, I used the experience, the example of an Egg McMuffin. Most kids know what an Egg McMuffin is. So we say, okay, what's in an Egg McMuffin? Well, there's the biscuit, right? There's the egg, there's cheese, and there's ham. So where does the biscuit come from? Well, wheat. Wheat grows in the ground, doesn't come out of the store. The egg comes from a hen, and if you think about it really closely, it comes from a very specific part of the hen that you might not be comfortable with. The cheese comes from milk from a dairy cow, and the ham, well, in this case, the pig is very committed to the Egg McMuffin idea. The ham comes from a pig. And I remember a few parents going, oh, we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't talk about killing pigs. And the kids were saying, kill the pig, give me my bacon. So it was very illuminating for me that kids, number one, liked food, didn't have the preconceived notions that we as adults do. And all of a sudden, the light bulb moment when they go in the dairy barn, go ahead, next slide, please, Bruce. And they see a cow and they see the bulk tank with 3,000 liters of milk in it, and they make the connection. When they get to hold a hen, and in this chicken coop, which would be on the right of it, it's just a small little demonstration chicken coop on the right, they actually get to pick eggs and feel a warm egg, not an egg that's in a carton or in saran wrap, but an actual warm egg that might even have a little bit of chicken poop on it. And they see the hens in their natural environment. Next slide, please, Bruce. And they actually get to do the eggs. So then when we did the day camps, which was, again, I should mention, run by students. The day camps were a student initiative, managed by students, supervised by us, but run by students. They had the kids pick the eggs, make egg salad. The first day they made bread. The second day they made egg salad sandwiches. And again, that feeling of being connected, of being part of it, of actually having made their own lunch. And part of their responsibility also was to do the dishes. And I remember one kid saying to me, oh, I don't do dishes. At home, I don't do dishes. I don't do dishes here. And I said, well, thing is here that if you don't do your dishes tomorrow, you're going to be eating on a dirty plate. And by Friday, you're going to be eating on a plate that's probably going to have bugs crawling on it, fly poop on it, and going to be pretty gungy and probably stinky and maybe some mold on it. So he did his dishes. By the third day, by Wednesday, he was kind of the captain in charge of doing the dishes and making sure everyone did their dishes. And Friday, when we had the parents come for a little bit of a demonstration by the students on Friday, the mother came up to me and says, what did you do to my son? And I thought, oh boy, I'm in deep trouble now. I said, well, I'm not sure what you're talking about. She says, at home now, in the evening, he asks if he can be in charge of the dishes. She says, I never, ever would have dreamed that possible. And again, it drove home to me that without actually beating it into the kids' heads, they learn responsibility, and that sometimes being in charge of something can actually be gratifying. Next slide, please, Bruce. So that is the educational tour part. What's probably more apropos for what you're doing is what we're doing with our students here at McGill. The educational tours are for elementary school kids from the city and surrounding areas of Montreal who don't have the opportunity to get to a farm. So they get to see firsthand, touch the soil, feel it. In the summer camp, they look at soil under a microscope. We actually go out in the field and dig up soil, and they can look at the amount of insects that are in the pasture or that are in the ground. They get to touch a cow, feel the chickens. We have a small mini farm with pigs and sheep and goats, and they're responsible for feeding these animals and mucking out the stalls and cleaning the pens and making sure they're comfortable. But with our own students, yeah, they get that in some of their courses. And I do a livestock course, a livestock I call livestock psychology and training course. So they get to understand how animals think. So they approach animals from the animal's perspective, not ours. But we have something called MSEG. It's a long acronym, Macdonald Student Run Ecological Gardens. It was funded by something called the Sustainability Projects Fund about 11 years ago. It started off with a couple of students. Ironically, the first student to get involved was a woman named Emily McGill, no relation to James McGill, as far as I know. But what we said with Emily was, after the second year, Emily, after 3 years, you're gone. We have to make sure that this is something that continues. So if we don't embrace new students coming in and make this sort of an internship plan where there's succession planning and knowledge transfer, this thing is going to fold after you leave. So what we have now is a group of 6 students every year. Next slide, please, Bruce. You can see 6 students, 3 who have from the previous year. So the first year they start as interns. And then the next year, they've learned some of the ropes and they become the managers, and the managers hire 3 more interns. Those interns also get credit, if they do a good job, for a 2-credit course for working here. What they do is more than simply growing vegetables. And they do a great job of growing vegetables. They do CSA baskets, they market it to the public. They sell at the local farmers market, organic farmers market in St. Anne de Bellevue. They sell at the McGill farmers market downtown, and they sell at another farmers market, I believe in Pierrefonds. But they've learned more than growing vegetables, and they're doing it organically. So they're, sorry, I believe that's mine. There. But they're learning, number one, business planning, what to grow, what's marketable. So if they grow a whole bunch of crops that nobody wants to eat, that doesn't do anybody much good. So they're learning about business planning, about budgeting. They're learning about human resources, how to hire, how to interview. And even more importantly, once they start working together, how to get along, how to run that business. And I think they learn more than anything that it's very important that they have good communication and really good, it's important for them to get along and to be able to work together. Otherwise, that business goes nowhere. If they're arguing and fighting all the time, they accomplish nothing. They learn marketing skills. You don't just stand at the market and go, here, I have some vegetables. Do you want to buy? You have to engage your customers. You have to explain to them how you've grown it, why it's something they should buy. This year, so every year it's a new group of people. This year, I noticed when the people, because of pandemic, they came to pick up their CSA baskets, they had to stay 2 meters apart, and our students were away in another tent and only one serving them. So I went over and I said, why don't you go talk to your buyers and ask them what they like about it, what they'd like to see different. You need to engage the people you're working with. So it teaches them to be, to get some confidence, to speak publicly, not to stand and stare at their shoelaces and talk to someone, but to look someone in the face, to have confidence. It's what I would call, and the students tell me afterwards, it's probably the thing that they remember most about their education at McGill. The classroom stuff is important. Obviously, you need to know the theory, you need to know the lab stuff, but when you get out and do it, I can tell you, yeah, you take a seed, you put it in the ground, you cultivate the soil, you may put a small nylon tunnel over it to keep insects out, you need the right amount of organic matter and so forth. That grows up, you make sure it's irrigated, you harvest it, you sell it. Sounds pretty simple, sounds pretty basic, doesn't sound like a big deal. Do it. Go out and do it and see how much work it is. See what challenges there are when bugs get underneath those that netting, when the drought like this year might affect. And this year they had, this spring we had an irrigation pump quit, so they lost half their garlic. Do you panic? So the students learn this. No, you don't panic. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no sense moaning and crying and whining about it. What are you going to do? Well, how are you going to adapt? What are you going to do to change it and to make sure you're successful? I should tell you also that they get paid based on their profit. So Macdonald Farm gives them the land, gives them some building space to store their things. I do some tractor work, or we do a little bit of cultivation for them. We give them straw for mulch, but everything else they do. And We manage their
and Paul?
finances. Yep.
2 more minutes.
2 more.
And we want to
Okay.
give time for questions.
Right. So what they do is the money that they make, we manage it for them. We pay their bills. They're insured because if they're their own business, they won't have insurance. They won't have, we call it here CSST, workers' comp, I guess is what it's called in Ontario. So all those things we provide, but they provide the grunt work. They provide the vision. They provide the energy, the initiative, and the enthusiasm. And I'll tell you something, the look on their faces, next slide, please. This is selling down at the McGill market, so you can see their logo. Next slide, please. And this is some of the produce they do. They do a great job of displaying it. These are a couple of ladies from a few years ago. Rebecca on the left is running her own organic vegetable farm in Hudson and supplying restaurants and also bringing on interns and elementary school children, something she picked up here. And Marissa on the right is working in New York State as a partner in an organic vegetable farm. Not all of them are going to go on, most of them will not go on to be organic vegetable farmers, but the things they learn here doing this will stand them in good stead no matter what they do, how to get along with people, how to plan, how to adapt, how not to panic, and how to enjoy what you do. And that sometimes working hard is its own reward. It's a program that I think that you can duplicate in many ways with your students. And I guarantee you that those who go to Northcote and the first time that they harvest their own vegetables, or the pride they will feel when they see those vegetables being served in your dining hall, is something that money cannot buy. And it's an experience that's transformative that they will never forget. So I applaud you. What you're doing here, and I'll tell you I'm biased. I think producing food is probably the single most important profession we have in our society. But what you're doing here is going to add to your educational program in a way that no classroom or no other program can do, except for perhaps canoeing. There, I better stop there. Oh, final thing. I have 2 more slides. Thank you, Bruce. It's a great technical producer, that Bruce McMahon. This is a group of people, and this is teamwork. So before this, most of these young people didn't know each other. And then one of them, usually there's 6, but a couple others came in and said, can we tag along just to see what it's like? And this is taken in the fall. So it's not all glory and it's not all nice warm days. There's some cold, miserable days in the end of October and early November when you're getting the plots ready for next year. One final thing I want to bring up to you. Next slide, please, Bruce. Is sometimes we, as the people who are organizing these things, these programs, and as educators, can learn as well. This is a rooster called Attila. The young man in front came to me in a summer camp and said, can I pick up the rooster? I said, roosters, they're pretty aggressive. They tend to think that they're the top cock of the rock. There's a reason, there's an expression is that they're aggressive, they protect their territory. And I told him about the experience I had by being chased by a rooster and how I learned every bad word I ever knew as a 7-year-old by throwing stones at a rooster who was trying to peck my eyeballs out. I let him go. I said, give it a try. This young guy took that rooster, tamed him, trained him. That rooster followed him around. He came for 3 weeks of summer camp. And by the end of the 3rd week, that rooster sat at the picnic table beside him while he had his lunch. That rooster would follow him around. I have other pictures where it's cradled in his arms. He would say, touch him on the back and say, Attila, sit down. And the rooster would go down on the ground. It taught me that I don't always know everything and that I can still have learned something and learn something from someone younger than me. This guy taught me that any animal treated properly can become a domesticated, or at least an animal that whose temperament can be trained. So I would challenge you to keep that in the back of your mind too when you're developing your program, that maybe you're going to learn something as well.
Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.
We have a very few moments for questions, and I have one already in the chat box for you, Paul. Should Lakefield consider purely organic farming? What are your thoughts?
Sure, I think so. It can be done. I just wanted, my own idea of sustainability does not equate with organic. Sustainability is ensuring that those resources will be there for future generations forever. I believe that's what sustainability means. And I think you also have to remember that sustainability can apply to fiscal sustainability. It's no good to have all these esoteric goals and be an organic farmer and go bankrupt. It does nobody any good, and then no one ends up eating your produce. But I think it's very achievable to be organic, especially on a small scale. Even on our larger scale here, although we're not certified organic at our horticulture center, even our apple orchard is all, apples are grown organically. So it is possible. You have to be willing to accept some losses. You have to be willing to learn from your losses, but it's very doable.
And Paul, I have a question for you, and this may well be our last question. Our box isn't filling up all that fast, except with thank yous. Although I see one actually saying, given the school year is September to June, how do we help kids see the results of what they're doing? And that would be the same for McGill students. So I'd welcome your reply on that.
Well, therein lies the challenge, because your school year ends just as the growing season is getting into its high point. What we've done with MSEG is those students commit to 2 years to being part of that program. First year as an intern, second year as managers. And so they stay through the summer knowing that they're going to earn an income. And we just don't abandon them. We're there to support them. Most of my support is moral support, a little bit of help with when they have problems with their human resources. So that will be your challenge. If you're going to grow food, someone has to be there during the summer to make sure that when the students come back in the fall, you're going to have food to supply your dining hall. And please don't think that you're going to supply everything for your dining hall. And the students should know that right at the beginning. You are going to complement what can be purchased, and maybe as you go along, you'll be able to increase the amount that you're growing. You might add animals. I'll caution you that animals are 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. But I think you're on the right track. Start off, I saw something about start off small, build success. So start off with something in which you have a high probability of having success. Nothing breeds success like success. It bolsters confidence. You can move forward. If you have repeated failures, no one wants to be attached to a failure, and the disillusionment sometimes is hard to overcome. So start small, go organic, that can be done. And last thing I would tell you, because I'm probably going far too long here, is I would advise you, since you didn't ask for advice, I'll give it to you. I will advise you to give the students as much responsibility as you can. Let them in on the decision-making process. That's how they learn. Everything you do there should be a teaching opportunity. It's something that an old professor here, Dr. Bob Broughton, told me when I first started here. Every change you make, every improvement you make at Northcote, every building you put up, everything you do, try and make it a teaching opportunity. Students don't always have to have their say followed. You don't have to do what they want you to do, but they should at least have a say. And sometimes they'll come up with ideas that you wouldn't have thought of.
And I think there are a few questions that are quite specific in the Q&A. My suggestion is to promise that we'll get back to people on those questions. And I'd like to call on Mr. Paul Demery now to close us out.
Thank you, Heather. First of all, I want to say how inspiring you are, Paul. I found your talk really fabulous. Of course, I love Bruce's history of the property as well. And of course, Anne and Anne-Marie's leadership and yours, Heather, is just really invigorating. You asked me to chair the small task force just to look at this. And I guess I'll tell you where there are a few things in my life that changed my life and allowed me to, I think, rise to some of the success I've had in business. One of them was going to Lakefield. I want to start with that one. It was a big one because Lakefield also gave us responsibilities when we were young. And I was a young schoolmaster at about 16 kids at all of, I forget how old I was, about 16. And that responsibility never left me. The next great moment I had responsibility was as a ranch hand. At 17 years old, I was sent off to Medicine Hat, Alberta, became a ranch hand. And then at 18, I was sent to Australia, New South Wales to become a ranch hand. And those things never left me. And the reason, Paul touched on them. They gave me a sense of accomplishment. There's nothing, by the way, like haying a field and baling it and having a field with long grass. And then after you finish baling it, having a neat sort of beautiful field. It's clean and perfect. It's like when you vacuum your rug, in your living room, and how clean and great it looks, how good you feel. Well, let me tell you, a field, you feel 10 times better. And so those sense of job well done, which Paul was hinting at as well, and also the confidence to be on your own. For me, that was a big deal. I came from a wealthy family and well-to-do, and we weren't on our own very much. And suddenly when you were left on your own and you had the responsibility to accomplish certain tasks, drive tractors, drive the big equipment, take care of animals, watch over them, have a responsibility for them, was a big deal for me. So I'm convinced, as Paul says, that giving kids, I think, the sense of accomplishment, of responsibility as well, is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity and can move them a lot more than anything else you can do at the school, because it's what you're left with as an individual that matters, and that makes you into, I think, an adult that can then be productive and a happy adult, frankly. And so I think this whole farm idea is a wonderful idea. So Anne-Marie knew how to get to my heart on this and get me re-engaged at Lakefield. This is it. I'm very excited about the project. And I thought you're choosing Paul to speak about what's important in terms of the values that it leaves you with versus the to-do and what having to do was really crucial, because I think what you're doing there in terms of helping people build a business is fabulous. So I also love the idea of the new dining hall and bringing food to the table. And that led me to build my own farm as my hobby, or one of my hobbies. And I can tell you all my food is produced here on my farm, with any meat or poultry that you can think of, or any vegetable practically that you can think of, because I love, as it turns out, food. It must be my French ancestry and good wine. And so they all go together, and a great sort of garden and farm to go with it. It all comes together, as Paul was pointing out. In our lives, we take these things for granted, and it's amazing how we appreciate our food so much more. And there's nothing better than fresh food, let's face it. And so it's a wonderful project, wonderful idea. And that's, I guess, all I'd say at this point. And thank you all for putting this together.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you'll join us for the next one as well. Thank you very much.